Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research. The Sunday Roast presents 12 Stocks for the 12 Days of Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome to the 12 Stocks for the 12 Days of Christmas. Today we're joined by David Minchin, CEO of Helium. Welcome, David. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Hi, Phil. Happy Christmas and a Merry New Year to you as well.
So let's start with helium, David, and obviously asking why helium. But despite being the second most abundant element in the universe after hydrogen, just why is it so precious and hard to discover?
Helium is one of the important commodities, which is the unsung commodity for the high-tech future. It's used in lots of high-tech applications, lots of high-tech manufacturing. For instance, it's used extensively in medical usage, in MRI scanners and in assisted breathing. It's used in lots of high-tech manufacturing applications, such as in the manufacture of semiconductor chips, the important microprocessors, which are nowadays in everything in the world and which are also themselves in critical short supply. However, although it is universally abundant, here on Earth, it's very, very rare. Helium escapes from the atmosphere because it's lighter than air. So when any helium on the surface escapes out into space, finding it in economic accumulations in the subsurface is really, really difficult. And the reason being is that it's so hard to get those unique geological factors to come together to allow helium to be generated, allow helium to be released, and allow helium to be stored. And this is where Helium-1 comes in. Helium-1 is a unique offering on the London Stock Exchange. We're exploring for high-grade primary helium between 50 and 200 times higher grade than anything currently in production. And we've got the unique geology, which allows us to be exploring for this high-value, high-growth commodity at a very important time.
Do you want to recap on what you've achieved in 2022? I know it's been a very busy year for you, certainly with the Rukwa drilling campaign thus far. Just give an overview of what listeners can look forward to potentially in 2023 as well.
Yeah, so Helium-1 has been listed in London since December of 2020. And in that time, we have had a great deal of progress in advancing our flagship Rukwa projects in southwest Tanzania. We've spent in total about $20 million in exploration, which has brought the project from concept into a state of advanced exploration with some tier one targets, which are just waiting for the drill to come in and make a discovery. Our flagship project is Rukwa, where we were able to secure great data, and also where we drilled Slimline well in 2021. This Slimline well, although because of various technical issues, was never able to announce a discovery from. This well did give us proof of concept insofar as we identified a reservoir, we identified seal, we identified multiple occurrences of surface helium from surface all the way down to basement, all of which is pointing towards an active helium system with all the components required to make an economic accumulation. Since that, then we commenced our phase 2 exploration work, where we did infill seismic. We developed a matrix style approach, bringing together various strings of geophysical and geological data from a multispectral satellite spectroscopy to identify microseeps across the entire basin. The airborne gravity gradiometry work, which we reprocessed and reinterpreted, which gives us a really good understanding of depth to basement and the deep-seated structures which are acting as conduits for helium. We've brought in ChemScan data, which is basically all of the information from the rock chips that we collected as we drilled, to give us a really good understanding of the surface and to tie our drill results into the seismic, which we've now got more seismic data across our structures. We combined all of these together with the helium shows that we saw from our last drilling, and over a period of several days analysed all this information before we came to a decision that we weren't an exploration company, we're a discovery company. We're going to go back and drill tie again. Why? It's the lowest risk prospect that we have. We've got a robust three-way faulted closure, which is one of the best types of structural closures you can get, with multiple analogues in other East African rift valleys for being a successful trapping style. And it's because where we've seen the subsurface helium when we drilled in 2021, we've seen the helium in the mud. We know there is helium down there. We need to test it.
Okay, David, so as you're aware, we've chosen Helium 1 as one of our 12 stocks of Christmas. So tell us a little bit about you in the first place.
Okay. My background is that I'm a geologist, first and foremost. I've spent 20 years in various exploration roles and management roles, always associated with being a technical guy. So when I look at a project, I look at it from first principles, generally a nose down leader. I'm looking after the project. Share price will look after itself. Who's on my book, I don't know, given any day, because I'm looking after the rocks. Background, started out in minerals, in exploration work across Iran, Turkey, Europe and Africa. I worked for the British Geological Survey for a number of years, honing my academic knowledge and my mapping styles. I worked underground mining for several years. Then I've worked for a private equity group in London, where I was responsible for managing investment of $450 million across a portfolio of projects primarily focused in Africa. I've been around the block. I know how I like to run a project, and I like to run a tight ship. My catchphrase is cost-effective exploration. You're trying to make the money which you've been trusted with. You look after it like it's your own. You're trying to make sure you get the results that you need with the capital that you have in the bank.
None of us knew when we chose you as one of our 12 stocks, because we did approach you just before Christmas, that on the 2nd of January, a small bomb was going to be dropped. In terms of the rig being not unavailable, but obviously we're not going to wait 12 months for another rig or for the same rig. Just let's touch on that. We want to obviously look at the whole prospects involved in the potential size of this whole project and stuff, but let's touch on this first. Obviously you feel pretty about it, if that's the right word.
Yeah, look, it was a disappointing start to the year. As you know, when you picked me, I was full of a great deal of enthusiasm for 2023. However, my enthusiasm for 23 isn't diminished, and I'm glad that you did decide to stick with your decision to stick me as a stock of 23. It's not a Q1 play, but as I said, I'm a geologist, and you look at the fundamentals. This is a tier 1 project in an in-demand commodity where the pricing of that commodity is heading through the roof, and where there's huge potential for a small cap company to make a big difference and to grow exponentially on exploration success. We have been set back in our ambitions. We're not, I think it's fair to say we won't be able to drill in the first quarter of this year. However, we have got the rig availability situation has improved. As soon as we're able to announce a new timeline to drilling, then we will. 2023 is going to be a huge year for the company. If 22 was a transitional year, 23 is the opportunity to be a discovery year. I'm excited to be able to get our boots back on the ground and to finally drill the prospects we've spent so long working to be drill ready.
Okay, so let's just park that to one side. We know there's going to be a delay. How long that delay is, we don't know. Hopefully it's going to be a matter of a number of weeks or a couple of months at the most before we can announce a rig and when it's going to happen. Without putting timelines on it, we don't know. And you don't know. So there's really no point in asking. So let's just talk about the actual size of the project. I asked you the questions before. What would happen in 2023 if you drill this nice big hole, or 8-inch hole, or whatever it is, I think you said needed to be drilled, and gas to surface, helium's coming up? What's going to happen to this company?
Potentially huge. As I've said, primary high-grade helium is very rare. The commodity is very valuable at the moment because there's so much demand. But supply, coming as a byproduct of hydrocarbon production, can't be adjusted to meet the demand. And we're seeing prices up through the roof. If you go back few years to 2018, you'd be looking at paying $200 an MCF on a long-term contract. That pricing is now up over $450 an MCF. And in November, NASA announced that they'd secured a 5-year supply deal for 1.2 billion cubic feet at an implied price of $920 an MCF. So the outlook for pricing is going through the roof because the supply isn't there. However, on the flip side of that, it's not a huge capex on the project. We did some pre-scoping study work before we listed, where we would be looking at about $50 million to produce a plant that does 350,000 MCF a year. What's that? 1,000 MCF a day, which at $920 an MCF is a lot of stuff coming out of the ground.
And I believe Rookwood's got a P50 resource of around 138 BCF, which has got the potential to supply the entire global demand for something like 20 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of grade and size, we've potentially got the tiger by the tail. We just need to demonstrate the discovery and bring the project into cash flow. From discovery into production, you're looking at a relatively short lead time. You'll be looking at sort of 18 months to get your mining license out, to complete your feasibility, do the appraisal testing, get your mining license application, and then start the construction work. The construction is a modular form. It takes place off-site, gets transported in as containers and sort of plugged in around the wellhead. Then, we're generating lots of free cash flow. The tax regime in Tanzania is a 3% royalty for helium gas, 16% government-free carried interest, and a 30% corporation tax. Libram did a calculation in December. You'd be looking at free cash flows of over £75 million a year after all the taxes and after the government royalties. That's a lot of free cash flows to be throwing out. That's a lot of dividends for investors. That's a lot of self-sustaining capex to fund future exits.
And a lot of taxation for Tanzania, which is not the wealthiest country on the planet. I know they do have other gas stores, but it is going to be a good income stream for them.
One thing I must say is the support we've received from the government of Tanzania and from the ministry is outstanding. They are really good guys, and they're helping us to develop this project best as we can, as best as they can. So I'm really happy with Tanzania as a jurisdiction. It's a delightful place to be working.
Okay, so we're talking about the one main target, which is going to be our 2023 target. What other assets does Helium One have that potentially will be game changers in 24, 25, and so on?
We have our internal pipeline. We've got Ayasi and Balangida, which is 1,000 square kilometers in 2 other projects. Basically, when we started the company back in 2016, we applied for licenses over all of the known basins where there was helium gas bubbling to surface adjacent to a sediment-filled basin with the capacity to trap and store that helium. Ayasi and Balangida, 1,000 square kilometers in the north of Tanzania. They've got some very high-grade helium seeps. Balangida, we measured 10.5%. Ayasi about the same. And again, with that helium-nitrogen gas mix, which is so important for the clean processing, zero greenhouse gases developments we're trying to create. We've done gravity gradiometry. We've reinterpreted that. We're looking to run seismic next year after drilling at Rukwa, and to bring those into drill-ready status for drilling in 2024. The other key asset which we have is our team. Over the last 24 months, we've grown the team considerably in terms of operational and subsurface expertise. We've got the likes of our principal geologist, Lorna Blaze, who spent nearly 20 years operating on the East African Rift, understands the geometry and the nature of these deposits like the back of our hands. We bring in operational guys like Colin Ivory, Mike Williams, Owen Hughes, who've had 30 years plus experience in the industry each. The benefit of having this type of team, with the mixture of the geological knowledge, reservoir interrogation, operational, and of course my own background in minerals, means that we're able to evaluate projects very quickly. We have an ambition in the event of successful discovery whether we can grow the company to be the go-to global provider of helium. If you look at the name of the company, it's actually called Helium One Global, and we are keen to put the global into that with acquisitions of various projects we've identified where there is a low value entry point and the opportunity to add value with our own knowledge and our own expertise as a management team. So yeah, there's growth potential far beyond the drilling in 2023.
Yeah, and all this without the propensity to actually have some helium in a balloon and suck it in and sound rather stupid.
Most people I've met are able to sound stupid without having to suck it.
Yeah, me included.
I thought you'd done some helium then with that laugh, Kev. It sounds quite happy.
Yes, I have a little balloon here.
People are going to look back, 100 years' time when we are desperate for helium to fly our rockets to Mars, where you're trying, everything's on the cloud and you need to keep your data centers cool and you need microchips and everything. But look back at us sucking this gas, which, is key for fusion power. If you're using fusion, you need to keep your plasma in a suspension without touching the walls of your fusion chamber. We've been looking at the people sucking helium balloons and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe they took the most valuable commodity in the earth.
What a waste.
What a waste. Voice squeaky.
Yeah. And I think there can only be a limited amount of helium on the planet because there's only so much of it could have been trapped. We did discuss this previously when we were off recording, that how does the helium actually get created in the first place? We say it's very abundant, but how? Most happens?
Of it's been blown away by solar winds anyway through the universe, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it takes billions of years to form. So how it's occurring on Earth is it's basically a helium molecule is an alpha particle that's acquired 2 extra electrons. So it forms through the decay of naturally occurring radioactive isotopes, uranium and thorium, etc., which are naturally occurring in ancient continental crusts. And over billions of years, micro bubbles of helium accumulates on the crystal boundaries in this ancient crust. And it gets released when that crust is broken open for the very first time. But you need a specific thermal regime to allow that helium to escape out of the crystal boundaries. So you need to be within a specific range from a volcanic center. We refer to it as the Goldilocks zone, because if you're too close, if you're too far away, you don't get enough heat. The helium doesn't get released, just getting fracturing, but no big burp. If you're too close to the volcanic center, any helium that gets released is diluted by carbon dioxide venting out of the magma chamber and is completely non-economic. So you need this Goldilocks zone of between 50 and 250 kilometers of a volcanic center on a rift zone breaking open ancient continental crust for the very first time. And above that, you need all of the component parts of a hydrocarbon system, by which I mean you need reservoir, you need seal, you need trap, so it can actually accumulate in an economic accumulation. Mm-hmm. So the requirements necessary to form a geological source and trap of helium is very, very rare, and we're in a unique position in Tanzania because the crust there is 2.5 billion years old, so it has a lot of helium to release. The University of Oxford estimated, I think it was 700,000 billion cubic feet of helium gas retained or generated in that continental crust in that period, which is being released by the rifting and has the capacity to be trapped. So yeah, we're in the right place.
So David, so obviously this being a Christmas themed podcast, first question is, what is the best Christmas present you've ever either received or gifted someone?
I'd like to say it's being invited to be your 12th day of Christmas, your partridge in a pear tree, as it were, to round off to round off your party season, and to be invited to be one of your top picks of 23. I think it's going to be a huge year for Helium One, and it's a good stock for investors.
Well, I'm glad that we've been able to do that.
Yeah, and now we want a real present. That's not a present.
Yeah, that's this year I was given, my wife gave me a subscription to a beer club, so I get 12 locally made ales from the Surrey region delivered to my door every month, which I may enjoy at my leisure.
Which is perfect, isn't it, for dry January now?
They might stack up at the top of the shelf first month, but
you reckon after the 2nd of January, David's on a dry January?
I genuinely think that whole month subscription was smashed in on the 2nd of January. To
be honest, yes. No, I'm saving them all for when we contract a rig, and
And the second question then is, what is Christmas dinner in the household?
So Christmas dinner is always very traditional. Turkey, the sprouts, the pigs in blankets, bread sauce with a gravy, good wholesome stuff. Christmas Eve is always good. My wife's from Finland, so she does smoked fish and the traditional Finnish casseroles that they get on Christmas Eve in Finland. So that's always an exciting time.
Yeah, because they celebrate it all on the Christmas Eve rather than the day, don't they? That's their big celebration.
Yeah, in fact, when we first got together, we had this discussion because in Finland, Santa Claus arrives on the evening of Christmas Eve because that's where he's leaving from. So obviously he goes to Finland first and then goes around the rest of the world. But with young kids, I don't want them opening their stockings on Christmas Eve at night and then bouncing around the walls. I need them to wake up on Christmas morning. So,
and obviously you have a few helium balloons there that you can ingest at some point and make your voice squeaky on Christmas Day, which is all good. Helium 1, yes, we're even with the rig delay, we're very confident that this is going to be something that will give people an extremely good chance of exponential growth, I think, in share price over the next year to 2 years. And yeah, we wish you luck.
Thank you very much, Phil. And thank you very much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure to be invited on the show.
David Minchin, CEO of Helium 1. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Cheers.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.